If you had the opportunity to travel in time, would you travel to the time of Jesus? Well, that's what Ram Goldstein, a young genius scientist, had to do to prevent the head of a Muslim terrorist group from carrying out a macabre plan against God. It all starts when Brant, a decorated war hero, is on a trip with his family. His wife tells him that she has a feeling that God is going to do something with him. Something unexpected happens here, causing the loss of his wife and 2 daughters. Ran is in Laboratory 19, working on an experiment, in which he was hired along with his girlfriend Amy and 2 friends, in order to teleport an object from one place to another, in exchange for $2 million. They have already spent 3 months in the experiment, and the only thing they have achieved is to make an explosion. At home, Brant does nothing but blame God for his misfortune.
What kind of God are you?
In the laboratory, the geniuses are very worried and discouraged. Since Ahmed will personally meet with them and they still have nothing, Ram blames himself for the explosion. But when Ahmed arrives, he congratulates them for having created the transference of matter, since they hadn't realized it wasn't just an explosion. So Ahmed upped their bonus to $10 million and hired Brant to lead his security detail. After a few weeks, things do not seem to be so easy. All their movements are spied on by Ahmed's men. However, Ram discovered a secret connection where a conversation between Rashad Amir, the world's most wanted terrorist, and Ahmed is seen. There they talk about using scientists to be able to use explosives and transfer supplies, just by marking the coordinates on the GPS. As Ram and Amy know that if they notify the police they endanger their lives, they decide to carry on as if nothing had happened. After so many experiments, Ram discovers by chance that instead of transporting matter, he was able to travel through time. Ram quickly blocks access to the program before Ahmed's henchmen arrive and bring him before him. However, Ram is discovered, since Ahmed knows about the machine. He tells Ram that he only wants to use the machine to turn back time and stop the men who killed his parents. But Ram denies it and explains that by going back in time, it would create a primordial time continuum. Furious, Ahmed orders him to be tortured, and still Ram resists, so Ahmed tries to manipulate him by bringing his parents with him, but despite that Ram does not speak, so they decide to eliminate his parents. Ram screams in pain, but he knows that if they are told everything, they will still annihilate them and the world. So Ahmed threatens to torture Amy in front of him, but since Ram can't take it anymore, he agrees, so Ahmed gives him 3 days to get the machine ready. Ram knows that when the machine is ready, he and his friends will no longer be needed, so he pretends to be asleep while being watched, to program some additional functions to the program. Within days, the machine was ready. It was able to transport a man from one place to another.
Initiating.
At that moment, Ram tries to escape towards the machine, but he couldn't. Alone, and with the machine working, Ahmed takes advantage of how angry Brant is with God and challenges him to go after Jesus, to see if he really exists. Ahmed is sure that by turning back time and annihilating Jesus, he will end the myth of the resurrection of Christ, which has given rise to Christianity, and thus honor Allah. Ram's friends, realizing what is happening, manage to rescue him. Meanwhile, Brant and his team are transported to more than 2,000 years ago, right in the Garden of Gethsemane, and when they see Jesus, they immediately attack, leaving Jesus wounded and moaning on the ground. At that moment, Brant, full of rage without understanding that Jesus had given his life for him, claims him for taking his family, and not having done anything to prevent it, so he ends his life without mercy. But do not think that this ended like this. As Brant and his team prepare to return, Brant is amazed that Jesus had spoken to him in English. He hesitated because that can't be possible, but they go back to the lab anyway, and Brant takes Jesus with him. As soon as they had the opportunity, the team of geniuses traveled to the last recorded coordinates, arriving at the Garden of Gethsemane, minutes before the scene where they annihilated Jesus. They decide to separate to succeed, but in that Ram and Amy, due to problems in time accumulator, are taken back to the lab.
What are we gonna do?
They try to correct the programming of the accumulators before they find them, until they manage to synchronize them. Ram discovers that Amy, Felix, and Simon were looking for them in the server room. That happened in the original time continued. So Amy communicates with them in sign language, explaining everything and that they should free Ram from the south warehouse and hold them, because Ahmed doesn't know it exists. At that moment the soldiers enter and annihilate Ram and Amy in front of her other selves. Amy, Felix, and Simon free the other Ram and manage to transport. We go back again, where Felix and Simon in the past, trying to go back, only Felix can. Simon stayed because his transporter failed. Felix in the changed present Ahmed catches him, who confused, does not understand what is happening.
Oh man, it started.
Suddenly, everyone was transported and Felix explains that now the timeline is rewriting itself for having annihilated Jesus. Then the world is transformed into a horrifying world due to the consequences of their actions, leaving only Felix, surrounded by demons. Fortunately, the geniuses were able to make the second trip, just as Ahmed's men materialized at 33 years of Christ. There they face an epic fight, where Brandt and another soldier manage to escape, and although Amy is badly injured, she doesn't care if Ram leaves her alone, as long as he catches them before they annihilate Jesus. On the other hand, the first Simon, who was trapped 2,000 years ago, while manipulating the time generator, transported him right in front of Jesus, interrupting his prayer. Simon is surprised that Jesus speaks his language. He doesn't know what to do, whether to kneel or raise his hands. Jesus asks him if he is an angel sent by the Father. Simon tells him that he comes from the future and that he saw his movie. He tells him that he is going to die on a cross and that they beat him to death, that he should not turn himself in. Then Jesus tells him that even knowing his end wherever it is, his end will end the same way, that if he does not die there will be no way he will know heaven. Then Simon answers him.
Well, if that's the case, go ahead and do your thing.
At that same time, a while later, Ram, when he is looking for the soldiers, sees that Jesus is being arrested in front of his disciples. Trying to stop them, one of the men rips off his clothes, and they all make fun and laugh at Ram. When he runs away he finds Pedro with a sword, and remembers that it is the same one that cut off a man's ear in a movie. Pedro, speaking in an ancient dialect, crying on his knees, gives Ram the tunic to cover up. Ram returns to where Amy is, and when she learns that Jesus is being taken to be crucified, she is happy because that is how it has to be for the story to remain as it is. But she is very bad and Ram has to take her to a hospital, so they decide to go back, but they realize that Ahmed has deactivated it. Already on the day of the crucifixion, Brandt and the other soldier get into a fight, in which they are caught by the guards. One of them drops the time regulator and a woman who was there picks it up, and at another is taken by the guards along with the weapon, which is mistakenly transported. Hours later, Jesus walks in pain carrying the cross on his back, and when he fell without strength, Simon arrived, who, moved by his suffering, helps him carry the cross. Already crucified, Ram arrives with Amy in his arms, asking for help to save her. Next to Jesus is the soldier and tells him he can't even save himself. Brandt is hanging on the other cross. He only takes pity on Jesus and asks for forgiveness. Jesus only replies, "I will be with you in paradise." That made Ram even more upset, since he couldn't understand how Jesus could forgive Brandt, knowing that he tried to annihilate him, and even worse, because he shot Amy, when she has given her life to Jesus. So he challenges him to come down from the cross and heal Amy, if it really is God. Jesus just tells her, to save Amy, you must first forgive Brandt.
I'll never forgive him.
When Simon meets Ram, Ram realizes that he is with the first Simon, since as far as he knows, they had annihilated it. Well, the important thing at that moment is to look for Brandt's time accumulators and the soldier to go back and save Amy. In the present, Ahmed finds the weapon transported, so he decides to go himself to annihilate them all, arguing that Jesus may have been a prophet, but he is not God. Ahmed is transported right to the tomb of Jesus and says that no one will remember him. Ram talking with Simon, he doesn't understand why God lets all these things happen. He feels bewildered that if he forgives Brant, Ami will be saved, but he is already dead and he still can't forgive him no matter how hard he tries, and says he forgives him. At that moment Amy wakes up, and seeing the blood stain that Simon has on his clothes, he tells her that it is the blood of Jesus who died on the cross 2 days ago. She wants them to take her to his grave to see the resurrection. So they go and stand outside to await the resurrection, while Ahmed is inside, taking a DNA sample for his lab. At that moment, the earth began to rumble. Ahmed is afraid and teleports. Suddenly a supernatural force removes the stone from the tomb. Ran, still seeing the resurrection with his own eyes, is still incredulous and goes in to look for the body, saying that it was stolen. In that, Jesus appears to Amy and tells her that if one of the 100 sheep goes astray, he has to leave a time alone with the others, until he finds her and takes her home, Amy dying next to him. When Ram finds her, she breaks into tears. 2 women arrive there and she gives Ram the time accumulator they had found, so she returns with Simon to the present. But when they arrive they hurt Simon. Ram manages to run the program, so he can travel back days. And tells Simon that as soon as he leaves, he has to destroy the machine by shooting at the hard drive. He further tells him that he couldn't be mad at someone who doesn't exist by continuing his disbelief. When Brant and his men arrive, Ram transports himself and Simon destroys the CPU. Appearing Ram, in the original continuous tense of the present. 10 minutes before the death of their parents, thus managing to save both their lives. They do not understand what is happening and Ram explains all of Ahmed's plan, then goes to annihilate him, since the continuous time is expiring. And everything repeats itself until Brant and Ram meet. He claims him for having taken the lives of his parents and Amy. Brant logically says that he didn't do it. Of course, how was he going to do it? If it hasn't happened yet. Brant at that moment is still very hurt by losing his family, and without caring about anything he asks Ram to annihilate him, and that's when Ram really forgives him. She finally succeeded, she forgave him from her heart. At that moment the parents arrive, then the soldier, who takes Amy hostage. So Ram takes Brant hostage as well, but suddenly Ahmed comes out of hiding and shoots Ram, as no one will stop him in his quest to get the secret of time travel. He asks for the code, and threatens to shoot his father, but Rand says he hears a woman's voice with a British accent, and tells Brant that the message is for him, telling him, "You're a hero." Brand knows that it could not be more than Diane, his deceased wife. So Brant reacts and tries to save Ram, but it is the same Ram that reacts by attacking and annihilating Ahmed, since Ram knows that he will only be in this time temporarily. At that moment the police arrive, and Brant gives away the names of the terrorist network. Ram, very hurt, asks Amy to read to him on the mobile app what happened when Jesus was captured, and upon reading it, he realizes that the Bible mentions a young man who was stripped of his clothes and fled without clothes. It was him, so it feels like he was part of the story, and he dies in Amy's arms. That's when the real Ram arrives, remember? Who was tied to the chair before the copy saved his parents. Amy, as a faithful believer, is sure that God allowed all this to happen, so that Brant, now a paraplegic, would find his way back to God, and if they could change a small event, he could restore everything as it was. So Ram leaves at the time of the accident to prevent it, without Brant's knowledge. Brant, thinking he ran over someone, gets out of the car, but only finds a helmet and a letter in which he has as a postscript, "It's time to be a hero." Brant doesn't know what happened, but he believes that God was taking care of his family. Tall. Rewinding the tape, on the back of the stop sign, there was a second envelope, addressed to Ram, where he had all the encrypted secrets to time travel, so Ram created a time machine, but this time he used it to win billions of dollars to be able to buy a house and a small boat. How curious. Ram took a look at the future. Remember when Ram and Amy were shot in Lab 19? Well, they traveled to the future, but not only them, Ahmed also transported, before the timeline expired. He brought with him the DNA of Jesus and was able to clone him, creating a big problem. This new Jesus is the exact opposite of the Jesus we know, that's why they should call him the Antichrist.
Este es el resumen de una película cristiana llamada Pascua Negra o Asesino AD33. Dale clic aquí y disfruta un nuevo video.